Everything here, yes. Yes,
Okay.
today will be, we'll have to do the same, do the public hearing for both projects and.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm so well organized today, I forgot my notes, so we're just gonna go with it.
Let's have a
All
slightly
right, it
lower
is
budget for
11:33, and we'll open the LPA, special LPA meeting here. In attendance,
Scott Sefford.
Jane Plummer?
Wayne Heil,
Dan Hughes.
Roger Vaness.
and Karen Swanbeck were is
yet.
absent at this time.
Horst Kritzer?
Horst
Christopher.
Kritzer.
And attorney.
All right, and Jason Green from town. Okay, we're gonna start with rising, do the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please remain standing for the invocation. Lord, we ask for your wisdom as we make some decisions in this meeting. Help us to carefully consider the relevant information that has been gathered. May those sharing information give us pertinent points so we are all clearly understand. Help us to be innovative as we brainstorm solutions. Help us to wisely evaluate our options, consider the pros and cons. Help us to be unified in making the best possible decision and to effectively carry them out. Amen.
I got a text back from Karen saying that she emailed asking for an excused absence and the date was originally changed.
All right. It must have gone to the town. I didn't receive it, so.
Probably.
Understandable that this is not on our normal date. I would call it an excused absence if she did that time. All right.
Better make sure she doesn't know that this was an extra meeting. Better make sure she didn't know this was an extra meeting.
Well, I just
Well, the
texted
town
her. She
did-
said she
We need to
responded.
make sure the town does that.
That's fine, we'll take care. Okay.
Okay. All right, first up on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. If I have any comments, I'm going to open that up. Comments, changes, suggestions, clarifications.
I have no changes, and I would move approval. I just would note that whoever wrote these minutes, well, it's really important that they pointed out that Jane and I were 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
Made a, they mentioned it about 3 or 4 times. All right. But I move approval of the minutes as submitted.
I'll second.
Either way.
Go ahead. I'll second it.
All right, second by Forrest. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting
With
minutes
a
are
note
approved.
that Plummer and Hughes are on time today, is that?
We
Yeah,
can
yeah.
note for the sake of
I was
Mr.
early.
Plummer and is on time. All right, next piece on our agenda is we're going to open up the public hearings for comprehensive plan amendment to the utilities element. Ask local LPA to make a recommendation to the town council to transmit the proposed utility element text amendments along with the data analysis to the Department of Economic Opportunity for review. This was presented by the town. Does the town want to tell us?
I'll give a brief background and we'll just introduce the folks who prepared the changes. It is an amendment to the comprehensive plan, the utilities element. It's required to do water supply planning. Every community in Florida is required to do that. So essentially what these edits that have been provided to you do is they accomplish that. So there's a lot of edits to the data analysis, as you'll see in the front, a lot of striking of years and projected water demand, which obviously are far outdated, and replaced with new information. And then obviously and then what's required is update to goals, objectives, and policies as may be required as part of that this process. So I'll turn it over to the folks that help the town prepare that, and maybe they can give you a little bit of background about more specific the need and the statutory requirements and what they do.
All right.
Good morning. For the record, Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech. Is Jason?
I can't hear you.
You can take your
Take your
mask
mask
off while
off,
you're there.
Yeah.
Oh, I can? That's so nice.
I can actually understand you then.
That's so nice. Can I leave it off?
You sit over, well, there.
For the record, Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech. So as Jason has indicated, This is essentially required by the Water Management District, the utilities element update for the comprehensive planning process. So what you see is there are several strike-throughs, references to proper codes, state statutes, updates of dates, updates of applicable information. Bottom line is the town receives water. They're a bulk customer of Lee County, so that's essentially where their water. So their element is a lot easier than others, as their supply is essentially from the county. So these updates are essentially just primarily getting us back into current date. It's just required to periodically go through this. So that's essentially what you have in front of you.
Any questions of them?
No,
Sure.
I'm not sure.
I'll come back to you.
I had a quick question, and I don't know if it's necessarily for Tetra Tech or for Jason. A lot of times with various elements in the comp plan, the demographics don't always line up. Lee County Utilities might be using one thing, town's got other population projections. Are we keeping an eye on that just to try to ensure consistency?
I believe so. It looked like there was an update to the population, and if I'm not mistaken, our agreement with Lee County, it's bulk, right? So you buy volume based on current demand, which we have real users, right? Almost in a built-out situation, so something to add to that. But it looked like there was an update, and our actually population projections weren't that far off from
Right.
15, 20 years ago.
No, all of that's updated based on the information that we have. But as a bulk customer, that makes it a lot easier. It's unless you get into huge modifications in the planning element where population and density would change. I suspect in another 5 years we'll be looking at very similar data.
When you don't have large tracts of land to develop that create huge swings, it's easier, you're a little bit more accurate with the projections.
And the concern isn't really from the utilities element and what we're paying or the bulk for bulk water assumptions that we've made. It's more from the standpoint of when you do look at the planning element and other, we're going to be updating the comp plan piecemeal, different elements at different times. And I've seen it in other comp plans where, got assumptions that are taken from the MPO, Lee County Utilities, Heber, and you got 4 or 5 different projections in one comp plan. And when you need to make further decisions down the line, everybody's looking at each other going, what are the correct population projections? That just something to keep an eye on as we move forward.
And that's a good point. And again, I think it also ties back to using real data of the water supply of what we're selling versus, like we said, the larger tracts of land. A 150-acre tract or thousands of acres of tract like Lee County have that can develop quickly, bigger swings.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Also the takedown of those developers also.
Morris, do you have anything for him?
Nope, at this time, thank you.
Well, are we going to, what are we going to be doing? Are we going to be
We're gonna-
looking at this?
We're going to be approving
So-
these amendment changes or not? That's,
Well, I understand that,
Can I
but I
explain that?
mean, are we going to look at every,
no, if,
as we go through this thing?
I don't think we look at every piece of it, because for those who are listening, I would say 90% of the changes are capitalizing the T in town, striking through, updating pieces of it that refer to code that looks like in the county level that doesn't exist anymore, making sure that it's replaced in the proper way.
Can we, if they may, Tetra Tech can respond and say, I think what it looks like based on the proposed edits is that our element is in compliance with the requirements, minimum requirements of that element and what the water supply planning requires.
Yes, absolutely.
And this brings us up to date with those requirements. And there was no substantial changes in goals, objectives, or policies requiring new things to be done, new, Water, saving water is really a big thing, I think, with what some of the water supply plans. There's not a lot of new things that we need to.
No, that's correct, and you're right, a lot of scrivener errors primarily, and then updating code references, data updating population. That's primarily what we're talking about here.
It looked like only some of the tables were updated, not all of them.
Right.
And so
Here
for,
that you were just looking at our waste, wasn't dealing with our solid waste as much as it was.
the main purpose
Sewage
for
and
this
stormwater.
is water supply, potable water supply. And for Mr. Hughes, this is a request from us to ask you to recommend approval of these changes to the town council. And the town council's hearing will be a review to decide whether to transmit these changes to the state Department of Community Affairs. We'll have a review period, and then it'll come back to the council for a final adoption based, and then maybe some edits if there's some requested edits from the state.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that was substantially changed this as much as it was updating tables and.
No, there's a lot of technical stuff in here that, I don't feel that any competence and challenge or not challenge. I mean, it's, basically, we have to, feel like to accept what our experts are telling us.
Right.
Danny, you can correct me, but a lot of the information we have here was taken from Lee County and just updated, so the data in there. So from what I could tell, it's using data from Lee County. That's the most accurate information currently. I see this as consistent with what we need to be doing in updating the elements.
Any other questions? Any other?
We questioned the whole packet.
Not the packet.
I'm just wondering what's going on with the special events on the beach.
Wait,
No.
we'll get to that.
I got too far along, didn't
We're only on the first public
Okay.
hearing.
I? Stop.
No.
I turned
One at a time.
too many pages.
Yes, we're at one at a time right now.
Okay.
We're just talking about the comprehensive plan
Right.
amendment changes for for the water. Right here,
If you'll entertain a motion, I'll make a motion
this is where I was heading next.
to recommend approval as presented by staff and the consultant.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those in favor, so
Oh,
six.
I'm sorry. We didn't do the public.
We
Sorry.
couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's officially a public hearing. I have to open up for public comment. Here for public comment?
Doesn't look like there's anybody here, and also if there's anybody that would like to be notified directly, they can email me and
Okay.
put them on a list to send out when it comes back from the state.
Now, close public comment. Now, we have a motion on the Patrick and second by Scott Safford. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
What happens when I don't bring my notes?
Thanks, guys.
Passes unanimously.
It passes unanimously, 6-0. All right, next on our agenda is the amendments to the LDC Chapter 6 and 34. Recommend approval of the proposal amendments removing and adding text to the LDC Section 6-366, Section 14-11, 34-2441, Section 34-2, 34-3041, and through Section 34-3048. This is the special events now.
So Jason Green, Community Development. There's two things that go on here with the special events. There's a couple edits that are for the land development code that are before you. And there's some duplicate, and part of that is because there was duplication in our code of ordinances, which is obviously a collection of different ordinances that the council passes, and the land development code itself. So what this does is it's changing, what's before you is the edits to the land development code. What will be before the council is the resulting edits to chapter 22 of the code of ordinances,
Both.
special events. That is not for your review because that's a separate ordinance. Your review is the part of the land development code that edits to make those documents consistent. There was already a chapter 22 dealing with special events. There was some language left behind, apparently, from when they made that chapter, and it's created some conflicts. And it was also the council had been discussing making changes to special event process anyways. So on packet page 41, or the edits, and most of it's a strike out of language that's in the land development code.
Is that because that is being moved over into section 22?
Some of it is, some of it's being edited, and some of it's being removed.
Would be nice to know what was
And
going
so
forward.
then, if I find the page, and then on, just for your review, all the way through to page 47 are the basically removal and edits to the land development code. And I'll go, just refer back to page 44. It's clarifying the difference basically between temporary uses and the special events. It's taking the special events information out. So then, when you get to page 47 of your packet, it gets into, and I've titled these non-land development code of ordinance, LDC code of ordinance changes. That, from there on, is chapter 22. That will go before the council,
Chapter 22.
chapter 22, for their first review and second review of chapter 22. See language that's being added and edited. Our request to you are the edits that are before that page, are 41 to 47. that have the
You
strike
put
through on it.
22 in there just for us, for our review, just to see.
Correct.
Yes, that's what I
So,
thought.
because I knew you'd ask, that's what's going to go before the council for approval. They actually technically have to do both, right? So your review is the LDC changes, their review will be both. So they ultimately will get to make sure that they're consistent.
For clarifications, we're not to touch 22. If you guys have got comments on 22, that's not,
Yeah, it
that's
wouldn't be
not
our
our,
jurisdiction, right?
not our.
Correct.
Yes.
Now, if there's something that's removed from the land development code, we'll have to double check to make sure there's not a duplication or a conflict, and you wanted to put back in, for example, we'd have to make sure there's not a conflict between the two. That's part of our effort was to try to make sure, as much as we could, that there's no conflicts between the two.
Okay. Very clear on that.
I was just wondering if you could just maybe summarize if there's any basic differences in the current provisions on special events and what's in here.
So I think the biggest difference, let me find that page, it's an attempt to try to, I don't want to call it necessarily streamlining, but better clarify when something is administrative versus when it requires the council to approve it. Essentially, if you're having Thanksgiving dinner with family, that's not a special event. And it got to the point where some of those things were being questioned. When is that threshold? So essentially, if you're parking in right of way, if you've got a substantial amount of people, if you're doing an event, and it becomes a special event.
This was in front of us for that reason right there, years ago?
There's been multiple years of conversations of
Yeah.
what qualifies as a special event, and also what qualifies that as being administrative versus town council approval.
It all,
Yeah, because there was at one point in time, and I thought I saw it in here where it was a based, if you had over so many people, it was a special event. Yeah, at one point in time, and I think I saw it mixed in this.
would a charity event with 20 people at hotel per se require a special event now?
I don't
Depends on the
believe
parking.
so, no. But again, if they need off-site parking and police and those sorts of things, then that potentially could trigger. The main thing is the impact. That's what it's trying to measure, is if having an off-site impact or an impact to the public, then that's.
That pulls it, but that piece, if I saw right, is pulled out of us and put into 22. Yeah. We're looking, so for us, we're looking at lighting, we're looking at anything that would be a temporary use, temporary building like a tent.
So if you
Saw
go,
this, most of it got moved.
there was a page 48 of your packet. I'm sorry, it's 47 and 48. It basically added a definition of that activity. It listed things that do not including, I think this answers part of your question, any unusual or customary non-commercial accessory use of a residential dwelling unit. Again, family over for Thanksgiving or Christmas, that's kind of work. Any use or activity specifically approved by a development permit issued by the city. So if you've already got the approval, you don't need to come back and do that. Private gatherings that'll make no use of a public property other than for lawful parking. Now, the difference there being lawful. We have a lot of unlawful, or even temporary parking. But again, that was what we originally talked about, is blocking of the roads, blocking of emergency vehicle access, creating potential hazards. Those are the main things that we wanted to. This was worked on over the last year between previous staff and the council liaison.
Can you explain to me, because one thing I'm noticing what we moved and what we didn't move, but we kept hours of operation in on our side, but didn't that just fall, look at
You talking about for temporary
time
use?
limits,
Under the land development code?
it would be under generally permit 34-3, 3041.
Page.
Oh, it starts on 43, which then talks about Christmas tree lots, holiday seasonal, annual lots, which really does describe the temporary use pieces of this. Garage sales or yard signs with a maximum 2 permits. Garage sale permits will be free of charge. Other similar uses, temporary nature structure. It goes into lighting, which I understand would fall under us, but the time limit piece, that feels like that's more something that should fall, that doesn't necessarily fall under, doesn't feel like it belongs here.
I was gonna ask that too, so time limit is now 3
It
times
feels
a
like
year
it should
instead of
be, you know,
twice a year or once?
well,
I can't hear you,
I'm
Scott.
sorry, so the time limit is now, you can have the same event at the same place 3 times a year now instead of once every 6 months.
but like hours of operation, those type of stuff, does that need to fall under this, under chapter 34 versus not going to 22? Or am I just a little confused? General criteria and limitations. This is what I'm asking, why is it, doesn't feel like it falls under 34?
I
been
think it's an attempt
stricken.
to control and regulate the temporary uses. Then perhaps once it go beyond that, then it can become a special event or falls under a different permitting process.
You're saying that piece falls under the temporary use piece and not the special event permit piece
Right,
of
the
it?
34, 3041 that you mentioned, temporary uses. Again, it used to be temporary uses and special events, and it was mixed. Now it's an attempt to regulate temporary uses, such as what was listed here. They're generally for short term, but 30 to 45 days could be. Regulate and put some development regulations on them so they don't impact adjacent. Results, we don't want rights to utilize a temporary use permit often, and then it becomes almost a permanent development activity. It's going to be that. I mean, really, you got to remember, temporary use permit regulations are almost an exemption, so to speak. Your land development codes, they're just temporary in nature, not a permanent use. If they're going to be a permanent use, they should probably get their zoning or development or what have you to include that. That's what it's trying to do, is limit.
Madam Chair. In the permitting fees, the only thing that I see that, it rubs me the wrong way, I guess, is that, the town is exempt from permit fees. Read that, okay? But I think that we have an entity within our town that has to get permitting fees that should be exempt because they are initially town liaison for our community, and that's the chamber. I feel like, that they shouldn't have to be paying permit fees.
They're a private entity.
They're part of the town.
No, they're a private entity. I'm sorry, I disagree. I
No,
believe
you see,
they're
no,
a private business. They're a private entity. Are not a government agency.
But they do not do it for profit for because of ongoing expenses, I guess, to operate, maybe the Pirate Fest, which is a good thing for the town. But we have to charge a fee in order to have the Pirate Fest for the town. It is for the town. It's not for a specific person or people. It's an event for the town.
But if we did that, would we be opening it up for all nonprofits to not pay a fee? Because what you're saying is that they're a private entity, but they're a nonprofit, not a government
That's what I'm
agency.
trying to say. yes.
Let me put it this way. I don't believe that the fee discussion is appropriate for the land development code.
Okay. Well,
The town council adopts a fee schedule for permits and other reviews by separate resolution every year with the budget. You spend months throughout the year, making sure and updating and verifying all the departments do. So, and having those discussions with the council. So I think some of this actually is trying to eliminate that issue. Throughout the land development code, depending on the type of permit or the developed, it had different fees put in there. And then that can create conflicts between what the town council's adopting every year. So I don't believe that it belongs in the land development code, separate resolution that they adopt. I think that's a discussion for you to have with
But
the
they
town council.
adopt the fees, but do they adopt who pays the fees?
That's a
I thought
town,
that's what this document was doing.
no, so the fee
Okay.
schedule and who pays and how they pay, other than the fact that it says that, it basically says that the garage sales be charged. Make an argument whether that belongs in there or not. I think that was some backup for them. It's not setting any fees within. It does eliminate some references to fee schedules and stuff, partly because I think there was a conflict. There's generally a conflict. Once you put them in a section of code, a different document that's adopting those fee schedules, that's when you get the problems.
Well, I'm sorry, were you?
He just,
On the, there was an issue, I know that regarding multiplicity of fees where there's recurring events, such as the farmer's market and the events at, recurring events at Times Square. I assume somewhere that's been taken care of. If there's a example, the farmer's market has, there's 2 of them, twice a week, do they have to get a permit for each day they're here, or do they get a permit for a season?
The fee schedule related to those has been addressed as part of the town council.
Can you speak a little louder?
The fee related to that is addressed in the town council's fee schedule that they adopt with the budget.
and if you notice, it got pulled out of our side and put in 22, and it's in chapter 22.
It's covered?
It's covered.
All right. I know that was a very controversial issue, also with the Square Merchants Association.
And again, part of the attempt is to, John can correct me if I say the wrong language, but the use of land and the development of land is what should be in the land development code. That's what we're trying to narrow that not narrow, but trying to clarify and make that apparent, when there's a bunch of other stuff that's been kind of shoved in there for a lack of place, maybe. But again, chapter 22 exists, right? So there was an attempt to do that before. I think this helps finish that job.
I had a few items and I guess questions. Look on page 43, the definition. Under explanation, you've got definition section 34-2. The underlined part on the second line, which will not inhibit the usual flow of traffic, is in the assumption that it will. Because later on in the Code of Ordinance, on page 47, it says would inhibit the usual flow of traffic.
The special event trigger is that's one of the criteria for the special events. For a temporary use, no. Temporary use should not inhibit traffic. A special event may have that cause, so they have to get approval for that. That's where the break is, right? So
Okay.
that definition is under the LDC and applicable to the temporary uses.
So what it looks like is this became more of a temporary use piece, and then the special event piece went all to chapter 22.
And I understand, but the confusion is, right now we've got not inhibit, okay? So if I come in and I want to do construction projects, require storage, parking, trailers, I am inhibiting traffic, and now I can be told, no, you can't get a temporary use permit because you will be inhibiting.
Correct. I mean, that's the way it's always been reviewed as it was. I mean,
Yeah, but
the problem was there was the trigger of traffic impact or parking in the right of way and all those sort of things is not clearly a something that triggered review for special event. And the conversation the last year or two has been, that's one of the most important things to make sure of. If somebody or something's going on that's doing that, that should be reviewed by the town council as a special event. I don't know that what you're talking about,
If you look under 3041, okay? It says a temporary use permit must be obtained for the following, okay? If you look at item number 6, you've got construction projects. Okay, so on the one hand, you're telling us I must obtain one for a construction project, but then we've got a definition saying that as soon as I inhibit traffic, can't get a temporary use.
I would say there's absolutely no purpose to blocking traffic for number 6. You gotta be on your site, you gotta be within your development, you shouldn't be having vehicles and equipment and that sort of thing in the right of way, in the roadway. That's where the difference is special event if we're doing,
Because
was one of the
my
examples you
mental
gave for us?
picture of a special event versus a temporary use, special event, I'm thinking kind of a, an activity, a fair or something like that.
Right.
A wedding.
Construction, I'm looking, in my mind, falls more under temporary use. And we're gonna have projects that sometimes require a right-of-way permit.
They
And
shouldn't
you
be
would get a
parking and storing equipment in the right of way.
I understand, but I don't think that's what it necessarily says here. If I've got heavy machinery backing onto Estero, I'm inhibiting traffic. So therefore, I can't ask for a temporary use permit.
I don't agree with that. I think the intent, and maybe there's some clarification there, but I think the intent is when you're parking where you're not supposed to park. That's the problem with special events, is people park along the right of way because there's no parking at a site that had parking, and they're using that parking for another event. Now there is no parking. So where is everybody parking? It happens by my house. They do a farmer's market, and everybody's parked up and down the road right away. Those are the types of things that my understanding of the conversation is the town's concerned about. That needs to be covered under a special event. For normal coming and going of a site, you're going to have a temporary construction site, construction driveway. You're going to have that as part of your permit. You're going to store things and keep all these things on the site. Right now, the problem we have is that equipment gets stopped and parked in the right of way. You're not supposed to do that. We do follow up with people on that, make them move those vehicles. So 34 definition was intended that, no, you're not going to get storage of material and that sort of thing that blocks or impedes traffic. I don't think the normal coming and going, as long as you have a driveway permit or a permanent driveway or access approved by the town is safe, that's going to prohibit you from doing those activities. We don't have a method by which to approve temporary use of the right of way. Probably that's something to think about, maybe. Again,
So just picture, I'll give you an example, okay? I decide to buy a modular home. I'm gonna have oversized vehicles coming in for one day, a crane possibly for lifting this. Not a special event. I'm not doing a fair here, it's a temporary use. The way I see it is,
it's not a temporary use. I mean, that's a use of right of way that we can do permits through the existing permit process to closing of the road, having your MOT, maintenance of traffic, any of those types of things can be reviewed by the town, approved on a temporary basis. What happens if an emergency vehicle needs to go by there? What are all those standards that you normally have on an MOT?
how does that get approved? The example I'm giving through a right-of-way permit or what?
Yes, we have a right-of-way permit that has multiple sub-permits that we could do a closing or a partial closing or some other method through a special circumstance like that. This is discouraging that, and you got to really have a plan of how you're going to address those issues. I believe it's the same way as if DOT or the county, if you're going to have to close half of Estero for a construction project, it would be something along those lines. And remember, this is frankly the first real opportunity to have even the construction stage for the code. Can't right now. How you develop a site without having some of that. This is language to help that process, but we can't allow what's been happening, which is seven pickup trucks parked blocking one of the travel ways, one of the lanes. A lot. What you're talking about is definitely something that we temporary through the proper MOT.
My concern is,
It
we
needs
have,
more to be reviewed.
we have those conditions because we're on an island and space is very restricted, okay? The way it's written now gives the power to staff to say, no way, you can't do it. I don't know if we have a proper mechanism. I don't know if the special event gives me that proper mechanism for it.
It wouldn't be for the special event to do what you're talking about, that example you
So
gave.
my concern is, we're trying to eliminate a deficiency that we have, that you just talked about. We wouldn't need to eliminate it if we had another means of doing it. And I don't know what that other means is at this point. It's not clear to me. Well, I've got a concern of changing this and giving the power to staff to just say, no, can't do it.
We have that now. There is no construction staging, and you can't store cars and park them in the right of way and block lanes. You get a ticket in violation and go to special magistrate and all that for that. So if somebody, a construction site, wanted to do that, if they had to bring in truss, if they had to bring in whatever, the proper procedure is to come in, have a plan, what's going to happen, what's the delivery time, what's the window, and go through that and do that with us. If you
They're
don't,
issued a construction permit, they're issued a temporary use permit, what are they issued as, I guess the big
Yeah, that's what I
question.
don't
That's
quite
what he's trying to
understand.
clarify
What-
here.
we would issue a right-of-way permit for closure or partial closure or whatever they wanted to do. Obviously, we've got to take into emergency management operations and access and all that. Timing, is it 12 to 6, whatever it might be, during when school's getting out, those types of things you might want to think about. But that's a process through right-of-way that we can handle internally through our existing permit process. People, they don't do it. They don't because it's much trouble, apparently, to ask for that, or they don't think about that timing and the staging.
Well, I've been through this on larger projects that
Also
our
had a lot
company
of
works
big
on,
projects either, so.
but typically, we're doing a large project with a site development plan approval, and we go through the MOT, and we've got an entire plan. I'm building a new house on Fort Myers Beach where the lots are 50 feet. I've got laborers coming in. Every time I'm gonna have too many people on the site, I'm gonna have to file for kind of right-of-way permit? The problem is,
So the difference is-
we're shutting down we're putting some language in here, but I don't know if we're affording some kind of relief in any way and
This
addressing
is
the
not
issue.
solving that problem that you're talking about. That problem, has come before the council a couple times over the last, God, 3.5 years now, it's been, and it hasn't gone anywhere. That is off-site construction staging is an issue that needs to be dealt with as more developed we get. 2 years ago, there were some drafts, and 2 years ago, there's some drafts, but it hasn't gone anywhere.
Where's the best way to address that, though? I guess
That is
the next
to
question.
me, that is an
Here?
off-site construction staging because you don't have room on these sites to stage. Correct. Off-site staging, lot down the street that's vacant, whatever it might be, to stage for a short period of time while at some point, there
That
are going to be
offsite-
no,
But I think the bigger piece, though, is that off-site staging site needs to come in for the temporary use permit. Use that.
the right to do it needs to be added to, it needs to be, well, I don't want to say needs to be, to address your concern, I think the off-site staging is the only way to address it because of density in the small lots and all that. You're right, you can't store pavers and trusses and all that sort of stuff on a site when you're building out a 50-foot site. Off-site staging is the only way to really address that, but it doesn't change the fact that the use of the right-of-way and blocking the right-of-way is something you can't do today. We go out and ticket them, we tell them to move it out of the way. I was told that there was an issue where there was construction vehicles blocking an ambulance a couple times. They don't come in and do that and time it. I don't know why. Maybe it's the scheduling. It's hard to do. It's construction stuff. But only way to resolve that, I think, is going to be some off-site staging. Our current code doesn't address resolving that fact.
And I
It's an
understand.
unresolved
yeah.
issue.
I understand what you're saying, and my concern is, per se, I don't have a problem with the way this is written and your explanation. My gut is telling me that we are strengthening our language here to address some of those compliance issues, but we're not creating some kind of alternative or relief, which should be coming, in my mind, if we're gonna start tightening things up.
I agree. I don't know that I would categorize it necessarily that way. I think it's another issue that is not being addressed by this. Don't believe this was intended to address that issue. I think that is a separate issue that also has to be a conversation. We've had another council. We have. Didn't go anywhere. Hasn't
That
been
needs to
brought
be
up
addressed in
since.
other places in our code other than right here.
It originally,
today's discussion.
3 years ago, was going to be something added to temporary use. It was a good place to put it, to do off-site construction staging.
Sounds like what this is covering is essentially that, so.
Still doesn't address illegal parking in the right of
Yes.
way, blocking of lanes. That also, even if you did all the off-site construction staging, you still need to do what Patrick's talking about, which is address the illegal use of the right of way.
Should that be in the temporary uses here, or does that fall someplace else in our code?
No, I believe that that's something that anybody using the site and has to use something, portion of the right of way, has the right to come in and apply for that. Doesn't mean they're gonna get it approved. They have to have a plan, some details. They can do that today.
The ability to do that
Exists.
exists, but not in our temporary use piece of our code.
No, we could do it under a right-of-way permit. What are you gonna temporarily use the right-of-way for? We have a separate permit process, so we can do that. We can work, so, yes.
So a simple example would be a 50-foot lot. We're going to replace their driveway with pavers. So they've got to have a truck to accept the stuff that's coming off the driveway. They have the pavers already delivered to the yard, so that takes up the yard. And now they have to remove the stuff from the driveway. Where can the guy who's doing it park, and the dump truck that's got to take the stuff be?
What I'm understanding from what he's saying, though, is that they can come and get a permit for that, it's just not here in temporary uses.
When they come in for a permit to do a driveway, have to get a permit to do a,
We don't regulate your construction schedule. We don't regulate how you bring things in and out. That's not part of that. If you think you need to block right-of-way, in public right-of-way, you need to come in and talk to us on how you're gonna do it, what the timing is. Patrick's correct. Any other large project that has to do that through DOT, Lee County, any other jurisdiction, you have to do an MOT plan. You have to show how you're blocking that traffic. What kind of cones are you gonna set up? What kind of flagmen are you gonna have? Like people, what kind of, whatever, all these things are typical
where they can
requirements
correct there.
of blocking and changing the use of the right-of-way. Signage, flagging, all that stuff. That is something that somebody,
Finish this issue, and I've got another issue.
it's not a special event-related issue. This was to address
Yeah,
special events.
I get that.
And that was my question, it's not a special event permit, and you're not saying it's a temporary use permit, it is another, it's not for discussion right.
Whatever it could fall under, it's available to people to do today. People just don't do it. They block the right-of-way and get in trouble. Because it's easier for them to be quicker and try to be quick than it is to go through that process. It's an important process because it's a critical life safety issue.
This next question, and Patrick, do you feel that there should be an edit to this?
I think the record will show that I've got concern that we don't address this in any other way. I think a right-of-way permit is probably too onerous for most people to do.
Expensive, probably.
As an engineering company that I work for, do that day in, day out. We know how to do it. There's a fee, and it's time consuming. It's costly.
So they
So
don't
I
do-
think,
okay.
as you mentioned, it's been discussed. I think it should be discussed again, of finding some alternative.
Fair enough.
And then I had two other questions associated with garage sales. So correct me if I'm wrong, there was an exemption for garage sales. The exemption is gone. I was wondering why we're doing that. It just seems like it's going to be a lot of paperwork, I don't know. I think,
The garage sales always had to have a permit.
They've always had a limit on them, I believe, the number that you're supposed to have a year.
What's changed with the garage sale though? Okay, if you could explain that, and also with the banners, so that's been stricken, but what's the intent and what's changing associated with banners
Banners?
and garage sales?
Banners should be covered under special events. I think
Okay.
you can have certain temporary banners. So it's interesting because the town sign code prohibits banners. Have them as part of a special event.
To 4 weeks.
The other one was, you said,
Garage
garage
sales?
sales. I'd have to look.
Put it specifically in 30,
Page 43.
bottom of 43.
I don't have the original language in front of me, but I recall there being, do you recall? I think there was the same, I think it was the same number somewhere else in the code.
But what it says, at least on 43, it says garage sales or yard sales with a maximum of 2 permits per parcel per year. I need to obtain a permit. Whereas, is there an exemption before that I did not need a permit?
I don't believe so. I believe it was required. I don't know. John, do you remember the conversation? That was a conversation point, wasn't it, the council? I don't recall.
On a minute. I can bring it up.
I know that point was discussed during M&P meetings. Recall the conversation. I can't find it right at the moment, but from memory, I thought I recall there being the 3 per year or 2 per garage sales.
Feels like we put it in English language.
And if it was under a different section.
Are you feeling that we've put this in, that we've made it more restrictive, that we're having an issue?
I'm
What's your
just
concern?
wondering, when I read that, and I couldn't find exactly, what I was wondering is it exempt from requiring a permit today? And if it is, why
know why.
we asking for a permit at this point? And if it was an exemption, I would like to retain that exemption, because I think it just becomes a code enforcement challenge for everybody.
Agree.
I thought they had to have a permit previous to this. It was in our code.
But if it's already in there, then we're just moving
We're
in
defining
places,
it,
that's
yeah.
fine. That was the question.
I'm trying to find where it's coming from. Find.
I guess the next question is,
I don't want to confuse you. If you want to go back to your traffic conversation, just something, make a note of your point. On page 44, there is a stricken, and the language would have to be changed, but G, under traffic control. Point out your conversation with the council and the potential that G, with some rewording, could address, obviously getting approval of that traffic control through town. That may be at least more clear to somebody through a right-of-way permit or whatever that process is.
That works.
If the council wants to do that, then we can have that back.
I have a question for, let's go Dan for a second.
Okay.
Last.
Well, I'm in the same area here. First of all, in the definition of 34.2, as Pat pointed out earlier, by definition, it will not inhibit or vehicular traffic. Then you go over to 34, the next page, a construction project, and it requires a temporary permit. But what if that construction project, none of those things that are enumerated there are in the road or on the site or inhibit a flow of pedestrian, then why To me, that's inconsistent. If, in effect, you're broadening the definition of a construction of a temporary permit, because you're saying over here and enumerating these other things, it doesn't matter whether it inhibits traffic, because if it falls within one of these, and subsection B requires a temporary permit. Nowhere there does it say that it has to inhibit the usual flow of traffic.
You can do construction projects without blocking the road.
Yes, that's conceivable.
Okay, so that's when you get,
Not
so it's,
really.
you get a temporary use permit if you've got to use the site, more intense use than just simply building a house. Storage of equipment, storage of trailers, storage of things that neighbor might not want to have there on a 7-month, 8-month, 9-month, year-long basis, right? So that was opening the door to allow that to be potentially done if screened and done properly. Doesn't mean that they're going to block traffic. I think it's a false argument to claim that all construction traffic will block it. To Patrick's point, what is the process to be able to do that? Is that too
Then you-
onerous for a single-family house?
And you should say on-site, then in 6, because if it's totally on-site, if it's not on-site, it would fall within the definition. If it is on-site, it doesn't.
None of these uses are approved to be in right-of-way anyway.
Sorry,
None of these uses are approved to be in town right-of-way or blocking roads anyway. So the temporary use goes with the site. I think there's an assumption that construction is beyond the site, and that's not always the case.
all right.
What we're talking about is maintenance of traffic. There won't be storage of, equipment for 30 days. There won't be storage of trailers or other things in the right-of-way. What potentially could happen is you got to close down a lane for 2 hours so I can have a delivery.
What if it does inhibit the vehicular traffic? Then it
Should
doesn't-
not and can't
If it
unless
doesn't
you have
inhibit
approval.
traffic, then it doesn't fall within the definition.
That's right, then you need to do something else to
There's
do
another
that.
permit that we just discussed.
All right. All right, I'll just belabor
What was in the
that more.
definition?
The very bottom of page 43,
Can I answer the garage
Number
sale
5.
question? Can we answer the garage sale question? The limit was in the definition of garage sale. It wasn't in this section, it was originally in the definition. So when you go under LDC section garage sale, it talks about limited to 2 garage sales per year.
Is that still in the original definition of garage sale on the other side? So are we just duplicating it, or are we restricting it more? Back to what his question was, if it's in the definition there,
Yeah, but the definition, does it say it limited to 2, but does it say you need a permit?
It doesn't say anything, it's a definition.
Well, that's it. So my point is, right now, it's a definition, and it doesn't require a permit. Now we're requiring a permit.
where did the definition fall?
In the definition of the land development code, and it requires a maximum of, or the 2 per year is what the
Yeah,
limit is.
so, I can say, I'm a homeowner, I don't get a permit, I have one. 6 months later, I have a second one.
And I believe
If
the
I have a
conversation was,
third,
how are we managing that?
if I have a third one, technically, I should go in and ask for a permit, I guess. But right now, I have the ability to do 2 garage sales without a permit, whereas the new language would mandate that I need a permit for every garage sale that I do.
Again, not remembering the exact conversation with the council, that was, my guess is that was kind of the conversation of, how are we regulating?
And again, I don't, I guess if staff can explain to me what the problem is and why it needs to be regulated, to me, I just prefer that it be exempt as it is today. Otherwise, it just sounds like we're gonna have to hire more code enforcement people to start doing this on the weekend.
well, Pat,
Madam Chair.
in general, I would agree with you, but we had a garage sale on Williams that lasted a month. And I had a big truck in the driveway for 1 month. And I don't know whether there was so I don't know whether
That
there is
would've
any
gone-
code enforcement anymore.
Well, I could see, again, we can address the issue if it's a garage sale that never ends.
Yeah.
To me, that becomes the definition of, is it a temporary use versus a full-time use, or I think there's other ways to address it. But the average person that has a garage sale on this island probably has it once or twice a year at the most. Now we're asking them to go get a permit.
I agree with you there, in general.
Madam Chair, as an advisory body, if it's the agreement of a majority of this body to recommend that garage sale not
Yeah.
be regulated, then that certainly is your prerogative, and staff will inform the council of your decision in that regard. I think, one is, as staff has already indicated, the whole intent here is really to consolidate and to some degree make it easier. But at the same time, look at it and see if there's any shortcomings. And the point of the garage sale is that sometimes they become a problem. And, I know it's a circular argument to some degree, but in issuing a garage sale permit as temporary or, however it gets defined, is staff then puts in a standard condition is you can't block right of way. And a lot of these issues, and I suspect very strongly, and we certainly will have that conversation, and the council will, I'm sure, talk about it, is precisely that. Is that there are instances where, staff and the city and the town has received complaints that, the garage sale is causing issues in the neighborhood. And people being able to get in and out and being able to safely travel. And, that becomes a concern for us for, life safety issues, first responders, et cetera. So I suspect very strongly, and I echo Mr. Green's comments, I don't recall precisely the conversation when this was discussed, but I believe that's the reason why. But at the same time, I understand that, if it hasn't been a problem in the past, why start to regulate it? And I do believe it's because there have been instances where it has been an issue, and it primarily relates to accessibility traffic in and out.
Impact on the flow of traffic.
Yes.
And other,
What ends up happening is, we get the call from the neighbor who, maybe 2 houses down saying, I'm my neighbor's having a garage sale and people are parking in my driveway and I can't get out of my house. I need to go someplace. Those are the types of calls sometimes that the town has received over the years. And unfortunately, there's no easy solution, and there's not, but one of the thought processes by requiring a permit, we can keep track of where these are happening and respond if necessary.
I think the other piece, and this is where I'm going to put my 2 cents in on this one here, is that if we were to have a simplified way to apply for this easy little permit, rather than the typical, because this is not not a fair, it's not a carnival, it's not a
Deal.
it's just as, coming from another town where it was a simple 1-pager, 5 questions, sign off on it, send it in. It was more notification than it was an actual permit. I think that this would be a little bit different situation, that I would feel like it's more of a notification to the town that this is about to happen. And at the bottom of it would be a series of rules that you will follow these rules and it won't impact traffic and all this kind of stuff, instead of making it such a big deal, because this makes it a big deal. I think is where this discussion is coming from.
Well, it's also just, remember, you've got a definition that limits the number. You've never had a process or spelled out in the code of what does that mean and how do you do that. So I understand your point of it not being a permit. It wasn't codified under the temporary use permit, but it also said you're limited to the number. So we're either supposed to manage and track it or not. And so it either needs to come out of the definition for the limit, or you're gonna be on that, or it needs to say, how do we manage and limit those, or keep an eye on how many of those. You gotta have a process.
From a
We should do it.
practicality standpoint, just, you know, we're not allowed to use the right of way. We talked about this. Not allowed. Code says it's not allowed. People use the right of way. Code enforcement, law enforcement, go talk to them. Say you've got to move the vehicles or you can be cited. Okay? What does having a permit that stipulates that you can't do something that's already in the code? It's just paperwork.
The intent, you know, Carl and I were talking about the intent, we believe, was to help control the commercialization of properties. I think there was an example given about 30 days. Process is internal that we can, and I'm sure council's going to direct us, to your point, to making sure that it's a page to fill out and somebody says thanks and stamps it and hands it back. That's it. And then it goes in the address folder, and then we know the next time that this is your third one, whatever.
Or there were complaints last time you had it, you know.
Correct, right, for tracking that. That's an administrative thing to be done.
But
I think the
would
intent,
recommend that maybe we look at the definition of a garage sale. And we define it with a certain duration.
It already
And
is, I
again-
thought, it said 2 days.
it is, that is all defined, but then we don't, it's not formally codified into the permit process. So it says you're limited, but not how do we manage
You could
it.
talk about consecutive days or something like that, where someone that has a garage sale for 48 days straight can't say it's a garage sale.
It already sounds like they're not allowed to, from the definition of it, it's the 3-day event, period.
Right, so when I got here, I was told there is a permit required for garage sale. Definition requires a limit. We're supposed to come in and get some approval from us to have those, or at least notify us to have. This is the wording that says that, so I understand your
This is the
concerns.
only wording that says this, that we're arguing, crush this.
Okay.
Um,
There is, so that we're clear, there is a change to the text that talks about, that's 10. We gotta go back and check that.
really a special event and not a.
It said
temporary use.
7 days and it says 10 days now.
Is a temporary.
There was an extension by this of the number of days, so we gotta,
I would have a question about how many people really do come in and get a permit for a garage sale, number one. Number two, how are we gonna educate the people that this is, I mean, should we take out a little thing in the paper underneath garage sales and say permits are required for garage sales, 2 to 3 day, 3-day limit and no parking on right of way, so that there's some education here? Or do we just wait till they do it, then go find them and move on?
I've never had one.
That's what I'm thinking, and so my
Not
point
that there
is,
hasn't been one.
we're now putting it in here, so it'll be more regulation, and now we'll have more fines, and
It's
now we'll
been
have.
regulated, for the record. I don't want people in the public, if they're watching, to be confused. Enforcement has monitored and responded, as John said, to complaints. Have gone out and educated people. They have made cars be moved. They had to have things shut down, activity shut down. It has been regulated.
I just
Is
think
it called a
education is
temporary
our
use
problem.
permit? No, it wasn't called a temporary use permit.
I think education is our problem, and can't expect the town to, if nobody's ever done it, hey, let's have a rummage sale this weekend, oh, let's go get a permit first. But that never crosses anybody's mind, and so,
Kind of say yes or no on that, because I'm surprised the town has not had a permit for that. I would say that most people come from towns that you have to have, or have had to have a permit to have a garage sale.
Promise you, the people that have had them and somebody complained now know they have to have them.
yeah, I bet they do. I bet
They do.
Little thing in the paper, just let people know you need a
Well,
permit
Yeah.
now.
we've established that nothing in our code says that you have to have one.
But under the garage sales.
But a
so those people
definition
who
that you
them
can't have
get
more
it.
than 2 per year, nowhere does it say I need a permit. So let's not assume that we have anything in our code that says you need to have a permit. You have a definition that says you can't have more than 2. I don't see anywhere where it tells me I need to have a permit.
I think the other thing too is from a compliance issue, maybe have like the first 6 months grace period as education. So instead of immediately slamming people with tickets, be nice and say, hey, next time you have one, you got to have a permit.
Well, that's up to the town council to decide
mean, that's up
on
to the
that one,
council,
if we
but-
put this in.
What would it cost to put a 3-line thing in the garage sale ad in the
We're
paper?
kind of moving
For
beyond.
education, because,
We're moving beyond the scope of what we're discussing here by talking about education and moving it towards advertising. The question at that point
be
is,
a
are we
fine
okay
thing.
with it being in the code, having a permit for it, or, you know, the education piece, that's up to the town, it's up to the council to figure out what to do there. Their choice, they want a moratorium on them, you know, but at this point, the question is, does it need a permit or does it not need a permit?
And personally, my concern is adding a permit process where we didn't have it before. I am generally concerned with, you know, approaching issues on this island from a code enforcement standpoint, leading with code enforcement.
agreed.
And I am also concerned about an island where, at one point, there was somewhat of an idea of government light, where you don't need a ton of staff, and you're trying to limit administrative processes. And we're tending the other way now, and there's repercussions and costs associated with that. So that's my concern, and I can tell you that I personally can't support
Okay.
implementing
Brings up the
more
next
permitting.
question, which is, should we have, and I'm gonna ask each one of you how you feel about having this permit or not permit.
Well, I'm pretty much in agreement with Pat, what Pat's saying, because number one, it's a situation that probably would not be enforceable. But if we eliminate, if we don't have a permit, I'm still troubled about the situation that I referred to earlier. How do we enforce a situation where there's an abuse of a garage sale situation? And people are actually bringing in from outside sources, and it's going on and on and on.
Then you bring up the other piece to this, is that if we don't have some sort of mechanism for tracking, we really don't have any mechanism to,
It's complaint-based right now,
Right.
and it would continue to be complaint-based.
And that's,
we already have the definition of a garage sale is 3 days, period, which they can complain about now, so as is. But what is your thought about keeping it in or out? This is the question of the day.
I think it should not be permitted, and I think that we can have rules and guidelines so that when it's abused, neighbors have the ability to call in and have a complaint.
How do we enforce the definition?
Yeah.
So you enforce the definition by, you have 3
Just a
days,
def-
you can't have it, again, for,
How do we, the problem with the enforcement side of it is enforcement can't go and say, you've had this for the 4th time. We don't know.
well, but the point is, you'll have complaints, and if there's no complaints, then it's fine. Nobody has a problem with it, except the government making rules and regulations for the community.
Okay.
I don't necessarily know that's exactly where they're going with this, as much as they're looking for a mechanism to track this, rather than
Right.
just complain.
Exactly.
So,
The definition exists. There's not a clear mechanism by which to enforce that definition. This is a way to do that.
Well, can we enforce it without having to have, I mean, can you just have a call-in process of, I'm having a rummage sale this weekend, boom, put it on your calendar, and then
That is an administrative function of this
it's a whole
current
lot
proposed.
lighter than having them come in, fill out paperwork.
Do it online?
but that's the point. This is setting up the infrastructure to be able to do that. If we don't have this piece, then they don't have any infrastructure.
It's not a permit, it's just a acknowledgement. This is what I'm doing.
Well, I understand Jane's point, because I think I'm starting to understand the issue a little bit. It seems to be, we are trying to track people that are non-compliant. We need a start date to know. So I better understand where this is coming from, and I can certainly appreciate that and understand that we need to do something. I just don't know if the permit.
And think of it from, I think, and John champions this cause all the time, and when code and regulations come up is it enforceable? And the staff turn around, can he defend it in special magistrate? Can the staff defend that, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's a critical part of any code regulation.
Well, I asked, and staff had just advised me, we do have permit process for garage sales. And that's the whole reason why there's a limitation, albeit in the definition. Not the best way to do it. The only way to keep track of if you had more than two is if we have a permit application and a permit issued that we can keep track of. Whether or not that works well or is being used in the manner in which it's intended, apparently not, and that's one of the reasons why this revision is being proposed, to clarify and make that very clear that if you want to have a garage sale in the town of Fort Myers Beach, you are in fact required to get a permit. The permit application exists. It's there. Whether or not it's currently being used, I can't speak to that. But that's why there is that limitation of two in the definition. And we're trying to make it easier and maintain the integrity of the permitting system overall.
I can't believe that this is actually coming out of my mouth, but I actually think there should be some process where it's all about bad behavior, and we're trying to stop the bad behavior. And unfortunately, but I would like to see the process where you just go online, it takes you 15 seconds, name, address, hours, number of days, boom, boom, send it off, and not have to come in here. I mean, with COVID, who wants to come down here and fill out an application wrong, and then it's, the application is more important than the rummage sale. But but I agree with John that there has to be some mechanism where, hey, the person's having this, every other weekend she's having a rummage sale. It turns into a flea market.
And part of then it becomes a business. It's not an accessory use, which is how it's actually currently defined in our code. It's not supposed to be taking place every weekend or every 2 weekends. It's no more than twice or how many times a year, because it's not intended to be,
A reoccurring sale.
a professional, because I know there are people out there who go from, garage sale to rummage sale, collect the materials and then have their own sale, and it becomes a business, and that really is part of the reason why there's a limitation on the number of garage sales per year is to stop that behavior. It is somewhat, trying to limit bad behavior for the benefit of all involved, including the neighbors.
First, you want to weigh in? It can be simple if you'd like.
I agree. I'm not confused. I was really,
No, it's not even confusion, it's just that we've talked in a circle on this.
I was just, I had already made up my mind that if we had to have a permit and make people get a permit for a garage sale, that's just too much getting involved in government, because I'm thinking about estate sales and people just got too much junk to get rid of, or they're moving and they won't get rid of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to tell them how they can do it, when they can do it, and where they can do it on their property because of parking and what have you. And that's where I was at, too much government. But then our attorney and Mr. Green kind of put it in perspective in that, do you want somebody putting up a table in their yard every weekend and having cars blocking your driveway? No, I don't. I wouldn't want them to do it to church. I wouldn't want them to do it across the street, couldn't get into my property every weekend because they got a big sale going on, and it's not permitted, and there's no control. I'm going to wait on the side of the law and say that there should be some kind of governmenting process to say they can have 2 or 3. So I'm going to say that even though it's a pain in the backside, it needs to be done. It can be done simply, like Scott said. I like that idea. And they've got tracking of it. They know what's going on. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be the one sitting there, the person next door setting up his yard sale every weekend and junking the place up the weekend, just for a yard sale. And this stops that.
I am in agreement with you. Coming from an area in which we had to have one, it was a one-pager. Now, the mechanism is not up for our discussion, but the fact that they need to come up with one is. I'm in agreement of putting that in there just to keep track of what's going on, and if there is complaints, and how many of you had this year, and you know what, you've passed your 3 days, you're not, something to look up, something to track, but they can't track until we do something here. I'm for leaving it in.
Don't have something to track people that are going to take advantage of the situation.
But if
Right, so
we-
what I'll say is staff's not advocate, I mean, we're just trying to implement a regulation and a definition that's been there. And by this, obviously, as John said, we've been doing it essentially, if somebody applied.
That's the question is this impeded your ability to find people to try to enforce this?
No, my understanding, most of the people in violation are
Those people,
severe violators, it's like, you guys say this a lot of times. If you were just nice to your neighbor and stopped being a jerk, you would probably not get in trouble for some of the things that people do, right? I mean, that's what Scott said, I think, all the time.
but my assumption is it probably hasn't impeded us from having the ability to find them. Just like anybody else who runs a business in their house that is not legal, we have means to say, this is not a legal business, you are not allowed to do it. This is not a garage sale, it's becoming a commercial enterprise. We still have the ability. Imposing a permit on everybody else, to try to rectify a few bad apples.
Permit's
I don't
already
think-
there.
so I
Technically,
think
they're supposed to apply for the permit. Am
The
I correct
attempt,
on this?
the issue from an administrative function, what I see is I'm constantly being asked, what type of permit is this or that? And so there's a lot of things in this code that we've tried to clean up over the years to clarify that. All I see this as is putting this into a category of, so that we know when we create our process, when we create right-of-way permits, we have 3 or 4 different sub-type of permits. When we have temporary use permits, we're gonna have this list of different types of temporary use permits. That's trying to clarify it in my mind for the administrative side. Not that we're just brand new now requiring this permit, it just clarifies that. Hasn't been discussed, obviously, is number and length, which I'm kind of surprised that's not the conversation. That is where I really thought the conversation would actually be, closer to be, is 3 enough? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6 days? Is it 3 days? Whatever that number is. Maybe it's hit the number, it's just the process is what you're.
I think at the end of the day, well, my opinion, I don't have a problem with having a permit in here. For codifying to have a permit and making it more clear of something we already have in place. Like I think you're also saying is if they're supposed to have a permit and we're just clarifying it, then we're fine. If we're adding to the problem, we shouldn't be. Correct? Kind of summarizing
Well,
what we just talked.
We have a permit that sits at the front desk. We have nothing in the code that says you need one right now. So again, I still have the same concern. I did like Jane's suggestion of, could it be more of a notification? It's just an extra layer of regulation where if I decide to have a garage sale Saturday and it's Friday and it's taking me 2 hours to drive up and for some reason staff doesn't have time to look at it, now I'm in violation because I haven't got my garage sale approved. I don't need that. I don't think a lot of my neighbors need that. So I think it's a hammer at where it's a little too much for what we need.
You're going to take our recommendations, our discussion to them, correct?
Well,
Your
I don't know if
question-
that is yet from the majority, but yes.
Okay.
We
Let's,
can point out those concerns also.
I got a couple other concerns, and then we can always come back to this.
Okay.
My biggest concern is why are we removing, and did we move it, or are we up to something else here? Post-disaster rehabilitation of construction of residents following disaster, the ability to have a RV or mobile home in your front.
Where is that?
That would be page 45, under temporary one-day, 34-3046A. It's been my understanding that that allows us, that post a hurricane, if we need to live in an RV for 30, 60 days while our house is being rehabilitated and under construction, that we can live in an RV in our front yard if we don't have any other means or any other place to live. We're removing that use completely out of the code, and my question is it going someplace else? What's the reasoning behind that? Rehabilitation and construction of damaged businesses or commercial use following disaster, rehabilitation and construction of residents following it, we now have moved it. Definitely not a special event permit. It's a temporary use.
Well, yes, technically it's got its own subsection of temporary use of mobile home.
As of
Wait,
code
hold
right
on,
now,
hold
you have no means to live in an RV in your front yard as code stands today, but this gives us relief in a case of a disaster.
Well, remember, so I'm trying to read through the section. The title of it is mobile home, which is not recreation vehicle. Those are different.
Well, but you do use the term recreational vehicle in here. One of those
It
meetings,
gets picked up here going,
one of those meetings.
no.
Where did you, can you point out where you saw RV or recreation vehicle term?
Page 45, section C, number 2, bottom of the page.
Conditions of use, the mobile home or recreational vehicle shall be removed. So you do use the term in here.
And under A1 also,
There it is, okay. Thanks.
For use of a mobile home or recreational vehicle located on the single-family lot during rehabilitation of the original residence or construction of a new residence may be permitted subject to the regulations set out in this section. A very long section, but it has been struck through completely. Did not see where it showed back up anywhere.
No, it would not have shown back up somewhere. I don't have not having prepared it, I didn't realize that was, I thought it was temporary use section, quite frankly. So, don't know the reasoning behind that.
Until we know, because I know there's been discussion about a post-disaster plan that has gone, that I do not believe is anywhere, shape, or form anymore. This has kind of died on the vine. I know that there's other things that I have heard rumors about here in the town, but without something specific, I'm in disagreement with striking that out. Until something else prepared and ready for us in post-disaster. Not everybody has a second home or can afford a hotel or has the proper insurance that pays the hotel for reconstruction period, and this is another avenue I feel that is necessary for some people to be able to just get back to life.
I support that.
I'm in disagreement in striking this through.
I
What
will.
harm would there be in putting that back in?
I will suggest perhaps there's a middle ground of mobile home part of it is a little bit concerning. Most of the codes I've worked with allow for the RV for temporary, not necessarily foundation tying down a mobile home. Bigger, it's harder to move in and out. But I don't know.
I mean, I would be fine with striking the mobile home piece of it and keeping the RV piece now. As long as the definition of mobile home is something that's a little bit more permanent than a fifth wheel, that it's there. I mean, we look at what we consider or is there a specific definition for recreational vehicle versus versus mobile home?
Recreational vehicles are defined by statute, and it's actually mobile home is an outdated term. It's modular or manufactured housing, different types. But the intent is that they're tied down to foundations,
Okay.
meet building codes. Recreational vehicles do not. They self-propelled or pulled is what the heart of the definition is. The unfortunate experience of having to have this discussion probably a dozen times in my career, what the difference between the two is.
Okay.
But, yeah, there is one requires a permit, the other doesn't.
I'd be okay with striking out the mobile home piece of this, but I'm not okay striking out the recreational vehicle piece of this.
I agree.
I agree.
Getting 6 nods right now. Not,
Does staff know why they knocked it out? Was there a reason for it, in particularly?
I
Had to be a
don't, I
reason
wasn't,
they
no.
wouldn't have done
So
it.
there was, I don't know if it was just because it was temporary and they were striking all the temporary. I overlooked that part when I was
Who
reviewing
is?
this for this meeting, but
who is?
is what?
Who is striking out all the words temporary? Is this a directive
This
from
was
an
previous,
MP? Is
this
it
was
staff?
working between the council and staff before, and I didn't participate in the drafting of some of this. I was reviewing this before the meeting to make sure it to you, and had been in conversations with Sarah and that, along those lines, and I overlooked the mobile home part of it. Didn't catch that. And then, the only thing I can think of is I didn't see the recreation vehicle in the title, so that's probably why.
The concern, I think, is appropriate, and I guess just maybe to potentially explain the rationale, is that normally when, unfortunately, when there are, acts of God and hurricanes and things of that nature that require extraordinary activities on the government side, not only does the state, but the town council has the authority to enter emergency orders. And I have seen, particularly with as a result of going back as far as Wilma, back in the early 90s. Most, if not all, and I can't tell you with absolute certainty because I've not read every emergency order that I've seen, but in the jurisdictions that I've represented have been affected by hurricanes or other types of events, it's very it's almost now automatic for the emergency order to be issued, that is issued at the state level, to specifically state that temporary use of RVs and mobile homes are allowed as temporary housing while people rebuild. And that then gets passed down and is effective at the local government level. That may be an explanation as to why it was deleted from here, because it gets incorporated almost automatically into emergency orders.
That's the same with the cells on wheels, the temporary cell towers. People lose their minds if they can't text or.
Yeah, that's also, but placement of cows is also dependent upon the service provider bringing them in or some other. So, but yes, those are pretty common. We certainly can into it and just report back to you all. This is obviously going to require 2 readings at the council level, and we certainly can during that process raise these issues with the councils as we mentioned before, and then bring back to you all at the next meeting an explanation of the areas that you all voiced concern and needed to understand or wanted to understand better why.
So as Megan has the RV issue, I have the cell tower issue. I mean, you've got to be able to provide temporary cell towers, especially in this day and age. I'd like to know where that went, or same as Megan's issue. I have the same issue with the mobile cell towers.
I think it's in our code, and it allows for us to also understand, before an emergency order is ever issued, what our plans can be post, if we come home and our house isn't there. What can we do and be prepped and ready to go beforehand, rather than waiting for an emergency order that may or may not have it in there?
Right.
That type of thing. And I know that we are trying to clean this up so that, you know, we have these emergency orders, we have a plan in place if post-disaster, but I've also heard from other people that, you know, if the town has to, they'll sit out front with a pad of paper and write permits that way if they need to. I'm not in a kind of agreement with that either, but I think that if, as people, as citizens, which is this board, I feel better with an idea of what my plan can be, or what some of the parameters are. So I like it in here. I like it.
And this section deals with a fire
Yeah.
as
a
well
fire,
as a
too.
natural disaster. And an emergency order from a governmental, state or local would not deal with a fire necessarily.
I know that, yeah, and there are limitations for anybody listening as to how long it can be on the property, how long you have to get everything back in order. So there are some limitations put in this so that the RVs aren't moving in permanently. So I'm in agreement with keeping it in here and removing mobile home piece of it.
I'm sorry, what section is,
34-3046 on page 45.
And I think Scott brought up 3047.
All page 40, pretty much bottom half of 45.
Top of 46.
If I may, one of the things that town council was trying to do with this rewrite is to remove redundant and duplicative provisions in the code in section 6-519, temporary placement, recreational vehicle and park trailers. Recreational vehicles and park trailers placed temporarily in flood hazard areas, which the entire town is a flood hazard area, must be on site for fewer than 180 consecutive days or be fully licensed and ready for highway use, which means the recreational vehicle park models on wheels or jacking system is attached to the site by only quick disconnect type utilities and security devices and has no permanent attachments such as additions, room stairs, decks, and porches. And then it has a separate provision for permanent placement. So
Isn't there more to that code? One of them that states that you are not allowed to use it as a residence, you're not allowed to live in it on site?
It specifically says temporary placement, so why would you temporarily place a,
Storage.
we can check, but I suspect that may be the reason why that section was deleted, but we'll verify, because unfortunately the staff person who, as Mr. Green has indicated, who was part of that process is no longer with us.
I think what John's talking about is also speaks to the emergency orders, because that's actually copied, that language is basically from the Florida Building Code and from other regulations and state statute, that you can't live in an RV, can't have it placed in a place for longer than 180 days. It's a typical RV park standard or regulation. That those obviously orders are superseded when there's an emergency order for. Either way, I think the point is I think what I'm hearing is these sections you want to see left for those purposes, because they also may exceed some of those other regulations. Unless there's other reasons that for duplication that John pointed out, don't need to be in.
And I think
If they conflict
what
with
Megan
state or
said,
federal
that the other section though may have a lot more associated with it.
Mhm.
Yes, there might be a slight duplication, but I don't know if you necessarily eliminate it because they're
Right.
dealing with different issues.
Or again, it may have been, I'll find out, but it may have been something that was just too conflicting with today's state or federal regulation that managed that process. So, we'll check on that and find out. Can't look at that specific section and find that, but I will now ask about that. And we'll make a note that that's a section, is that two sections that I'm hearing?
Yes.
Aside from direct conflict from state or federal law, that's what you want to see.
Yeah. Right, so,
Include that in the motion, please.
all right,
Back to page 43,
Sure.
the enumerated temporary use permits that are required. I'm troubled by number 5 at the bottom of the page as being vague, ambiguous, and subjective, and in general, a violation of a basic statutory kind of construction that one should be able to read an ordinance and know what he can or cannot do, and to have a provision that says any similar use, who decides? And to me, that's a unenforceable clause, and it doesn't belong.
Very open-ended.
Yeah.
So, you-
No, he's all
Okay.
right. Okay.
You have examples of similar use, or? Okay. You'd like to see that struck through?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I don't know that we have consensus on the garage stuff. I think right now we're still sitting pretty split on this. Half of us want to see some sort of permitting, some sort of tracking. The other half don't.
Look at it positive. Are you agreed on the length and the time, number?
Yes, I think we're
Right,
in
well, then,
agreement.
there you go.
Okay.
Half the battle's won.
But the question is,
I give
we
a positive
codify it
spin.
right here or no?
I
And-
think we can entertain motions and we can take a vote. We don't need to necessarily be in
Yeah.
agreement.
For the sake of wrapping this back up, I'd kind of, because we can discuss this quite longer. I get what you're saying. I would entertain a motion.
So let me, from procedural standpoint, we're gonna, obviously, they're gonna have the minutes. Well, they won't have the minutes. Somebody's watching. We'll explain this to them since it's going on Monday. The
It
reason why,
tends to make me wonder how you're going to bring it back to us if this is going on Monday. Between readings.
it's not coming back to you.
I know.
So I think
Report back.
what John meant was that there's 2 more discussions over a month period to be had about it with the council. I'm asking partly, your point, Patrick, is somebody, because I think what you're getting at is you could vote no against the entire amendment because of that one section, agree with 90% of the rest of it.
Correct.
Is that what you want to do? So just, or do you need to vote yes for it and then make the point, except you object to the other one? Something the rest of you may want to.
Why, you said this is not coming back to us?
Oh, this is a.
Why?
Why would it?
Because we may end up asking for language that we don't have today, defining this a different way.
We're a recommending body and council will make the ultimate decision. But in my mind, a garage sale, I can vote against proposed changes, explaining that the only reason I'm doing so is because of the garage sale. And if we all do so as a group or the majority, council would see why it happened, and they would also see that we were, that we supported 99% of everything. The reason we voted against it was the garage sale permit.
I agree with that. I think my point was, it's one or the other, right?
Yeah.
It's you vote against, if for or against it, then you vote for the whole thing, but explain you agreed with most of it, or you vote for it, but you didn't agree.
And even from
Fine,
a
either way.
clarification purpose, I like Jane's idea that if we had a notification rather than a permit, where I can go online, saying my start date is Saturday to Saturday, boom, I've
can't
sent
be
it
that.
out. I don't have to physically come here, I don't have to pay anything, I don't have to wait for staff to respond and check it off and say, okay, now it's been approved. I could live with that.
It could be so easy. You just apply, and if you've applied more than twice in a year, you can apply.
Well, I think,
And then they run a report. Our hotel, we run a report. Who's checking in, who's checking out. I know all these people are having, here's my list. If they're not on the list, then we got problems. If they're on the list,
And I'm okay with that. Again, a no vote on my end Doesn't mean that I don't support some kind of regulation. I think this can be revisited and a better solution could be brought forward, so I can vote no to indicate that.
We can also recommend changes to, our recommended changes to it right now, which is where I'm coming from right now, is we can entertain a motion of approve or deny, or we can approve with recommended changes too, which is an option. So,
Would be my suggestion would be to, determine whether people of a vote would be okay with just the notification process on the internet, or it has to have a permit. And if it's okay with the notification process, then we approve it all, except that we would prefer, or we would recommend that they just do a notification process, simple, and not have to come into the town and do it that way. It takes less man hours. It's simple.
I think having a permit though, or the process on the back end is not up for us. I mean, it could be something as simple, I'm in agreement with something simple as but 7 days prior to your thing. Because what if there's 4 or 5 on one street and you have a major event weekend on 4th of July and just
But
all the traffic goes to crap?
neighborhoods
It's
do
our
it
job.
that way.
But it's our job to, to give notification to let people know that it's happening here to prevent from any type of traffic issues or overall impact of the neighborhood in a negative kind of way. I mean, when it's done all in one day, yeah, people know it's coming. They know it's happening when you have the neighborhood, like the one across the way. Everybody knows, and everybody knows to avoid that area, that type of thing. But there's other impacts to this that they're trying to manage, and I see why they want to know.
Could we take that vote, get a consensus here?
What they're saying is that I don't think we
Permit
have.
or not, or just
It's
notification?
permit or nothing. I mean,
We can make a recommendation.
no, I mean, so you're going to say that they have to notify us? What's the point? I mean, you have
Point
no,
is that way you have a way to track.
teeth behind it.
Yeah, you do. You have your
What?
rules.
Ultimately,
Permit doesn't
it feels
give
to
you
me that
anything.
we're trying to get a start date officially on paper somewhere. That's how it,
Not being done now, so it would be a big change.
and the thing is, I don't know if we need a permit to get a start date. So again, I think it's a hammer in search of a nail. That's what I think it is.
Chair,
Yes.
in education that I got from my first meeting to the previous meetings now, is that, we're a recommending body, and we are simply discussing what's in a referendum. And we could decide we don't want it, and the council can do whatever they please with this recommendation. The only reason why I'm here is because I'm reading something that somebody might have missed, and we recommend that that wording be changed or that it be stricken from it. As far as the whole picture is concerned, we could say we don't want none of it. It's
Correct.
really not going to make any difference either, because if they decide they want it, they'll do it.
Correct.
They want a
might see-
crosswalk down there and we don't want it, and we tell them not to, they can do it anyway.
Correct.
So the discussion is that in the wording is what we just think that how it should be discussed in order that other people understand we're not trying to govern them more, but to make their life more pleasant in their surroundings and in their neighborhoods. That, I underlined 2 things after all this going around, and really that's what we're supposed to be doing, get different views so we understand. And the thing that really jumped out at me when we said garage sale permits was too much. We don't need that. Why do we have to make somebody do that? But then I see, yeah, we do need that if we want to protect our neighbors. And the big thing I saw there is that it's free of charge. I mean, we could do it online and it's free of charge, and it helps my neighbor. I would vote for it.
All right. Any other questions, discussion items here?
I think we,
Did that.
Beat it to death.
This is a public hearing, so I'm opening it up for public comment. Anybody here from public? Closing public comment. Do I hear a motion?
I can
I'm
make a
gonna-
motion. I'll make a
Go ahead.
motion.
I was,
Motion that we recommend approval for the proposed changes to the various sections we just reviewed, except for garage sale.
Removal of number 4 under
Yes.
B4 3041.
Correct. And a recommendation for staff to look at temporary uses and especially related to construction activities, and hopefully define a better process to afford some flexibility. And again, Jason, I would entertain any language that you want to put in there, but as we talked about, I think there, other than a right-of-way permit, there might be a process that could be a little simpler and easier.
Are you also including the removal of number 5 under, or B5 3041?
The cell phone? Yes.
The other similar uses.
Yes.
And leaving in
RVs and cell towers.
And
3046
also
RVs
keeping in, yes, the RV
30
and cell towers.
and 3047, okay.
34-3046 and include 34-3047.
Made that real simple for you. If you
Or-
want
And
to
as renumbered as necessary.
Yes.
restate that, go ahead.
All right.
I have
So, all
no
right, so
pride
let's
of
do it one time.
authorship here.
All right, so it's your motion is to recommend approval of the recommended changes to the land development code sections provided with the following changes of removal of section 34-3041 B4 and B5. Leave remaining 34-346 and 34-347, or as may be renumbered, related to mobile homes and cell towers. And then you had a request to try to address construction site in use.
I hear a second.
Second for discussion?
Any additional discussion on this?
Jane seconded it, right?
All in favor, say aye.
I have a question.
Well, she had-
Question.
we wanted discussion.
For discussion, you just said she was the second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. We are eliminating 4, which is eliminating the permit for a garage sale.
Correct.
And 5.
And 5.
But we're not recommending, are we going to be recommending something in lieu thereof?
Not according to his motion.
Well, we don't draft language,
No, but
staff
we
does, so,
Make a
right
recommendation.
now, I say we remove it, and if council chooses differently, they can choose differently, or they can send staff back to draft something different, bring it back to us.
Would you like to ask for,
Not in favor of removing it totally. I'm not.
you want to ask him for an amendment?
Amendment could be removing it, I'd be okay with a
A
recommendation
recommendation?
to remove it, and again, a request for staff to look at, other potential ways of tracking, the duration of a garage sale, if that's the concern, but right now, like I said, I think we're trying to,
I would second that.
But
You want to amend it?
I think that's back to the circular conversation.
It's an easy
Don't,
fix.
but again, just saying that you have to call in, there's
Not
no,
call in, do it online.
or
so that they-
notification into the town, what's the difference than just getting, I mean, we're talking the same thing. Just we're codifying it with calling it a permit.
Can that be done online also?
We're not gonna have a conversation about the methods about what
I'm
what
just
can be
saying.
done.
But that's essentially what we're saying, is we're saying you gotta notify the town by getting a permit, whether it's by a short one-page form, or if it's online, is to be determined by other powers.
I just have this picture of, it's never, nobody's ever done it, and now we're going to have this big thing to do it, so every garage sale is going to get code enforcement and action against them, and I don't think that's a great way to educate.
I think that also at the same time, you're looking at all of this very negatively, if you're thinking that all we're going to do is, by doing this, is just have code enforcement in their front yard. I don't think that that was the intent of it. The more intent is to notify the town, not necessarily send somebody slow rolling the garage sale.
Well, but
We have been enforcing garage sales and complaints. It is not, I don't want it to be left, again, thinking that it's new.
You've been, okay, so again, we're going back to that circular piece. You're enforcing the definition of it, correct?
We're enforcing
2 days to
enforcing
3.
traffic issues, people parking the right of way. Isn't that the
We
enforcement?
are, my understanding is we're enforcing complaints. I can't speak to, I don't believe we're actively going out on the weekends and walking the streets looking for garage sales.
So if I have this right, you're going after the parker on the right of way and not the garage sale.
Following up on complaints of neighbors.
Okay.
Don't believe there is a
Understand the
active
difference.
section of
Yeah,
code
there is a
enforcement
difference.
walking the streets for garage sales right now.
And we're trying to, if we're addressing people that are parked in the right of way or might be blocking traffic, don't need a permit to be able to do that.
We need a permit we need the permit process to enforce the 2 days twice a year.
There is a permit now, paperwork to fill out to implement the definition. Limits the number. No, that's not the answer you want to hear. I mean, we do.
Fine with it.
What are you fine with? I'm not clear.
If there's a permit process already in place that you technically have to be permitting it, whether you do it or don't do it, you already have something in place for a permit, then there's a permit, period. This is
Well,
becoming a moot point then.
Where is that section?
What section?
Well, Megan just said there is a permit
The
process already in
town has a
place. If we
form,
eliminate 4,
town currently has a form, check a box and fill out for garage sale.
part of the
Code
code
enforcement.
is it,
Is
The
that what-
definition requires you to have a maximum of whatever the number was.
2 per year.
Per year.
So it's already.
Town is enforcing that definition through a form.
Let me make this abundantly clear. It is bad form, it is bad drafting, it is bad government, to say it, to have a regulation and a definition. Okay, we're moving that regulation, which is currently, you are limited to 2
garage sales.
garage sales
sales
per
for
year,
3
out of a
days.
definition into the code itself, where it should have been to begin with. That's all we're doing. There's a permitting process associated with that current language in the code definition. Because the only way to be able to check to make sure that you're having no more than 2 garage sales per year is to look at our data to see, on our database to see if you've had, the town has issued more than 2 permits per year. Whether or not that's working, that's a separate issue, but it's there. There currently is a form that a person who wants to have a garage sale in the town of Fort Myers Beach is supposed to come in, fill out, and obtain, whether it's on the internet or available online. I can't, I'm going to assume that we are, because most of, if not virtually all of our permits are already accessible online. But it's there currently.
that's
Whether-
my
whether
question.
it
Where is
should
it?
be a
What
permit or not.
What section is that?
What you're saying is
It's
not,
not in,
it's
there
not-
is no section in the code
Oh,
that says you have to get a permit for a garage sale. It's implied through the definition that says you can only have no more than 2 per year. If you can, how otherwise
I
would we
see.
be able to track the 2 per year limitation.
How should you, I think is what your conversation is about. Should you have a permit? Should it be tracked? Should it be regulated?
Yeah, if the recommendation is eliminate it altogether or don't require a permit, that's up to you all, and we'll pass that on.
Right now, the motion is to have it removed. Right back at the same discussion. So at this point, I'm going to call for a vote. You either vote for it or against it with the changes as is, and we're going to send it on to town council. And they're going to review this too, and review our notes, review everything, and make the final judgment on that. So, to recap, the motion is to eliminate 34-3041, number 4, B4, and B5. Asking town council or instruct staff to create better language for 6, for right-of-way use, to put back or to maintain the language that's in 34-0346, temporary use of mobile homes, 34-3047, or renumbered as needed, is the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay,
2?
4-2. Passes 4-2.
I'm very much in favor of Pat's motion, except I think we're abrogating our function by leaving that garage sale thing up in the air. I don't know where the hell we are on it, to tell you the truth.
I concur.
Well,
We will make a
just
note of
looked and
that.
I can't find a permit. Garage.
Okay.
We'll try to best encapsulate this conversation
Yeah,
for the council.
And I'm hoping to listen.
Clarify, my objection is not with finding a way to enforce people that are turning garage sales into a business, commercial enterprise. I think there should be enforcement in those cases. I don't think this is a mechanism.
I'm looking online and I can't find a garage. I don't know, only place that they have for permits is permits.
Moving along. I'm going to close the public hearings and open the administrative agenda, starting with LPA members, items, and reports. Of course, do you have anything for us today?
No.
Scott?
I hope everybody can attend safely the boat parade this weekend. It's going to be awesome.
How many votes you have?
Oh, no, I'm not in charge of it.
Okay.
Not as many as last year, unfortunately, but that's understandable. But it's going to be the same route. It's going to be a great event.
Is it on Saturday or Sunday?
On Saturday.
Usually on Sunday, isn't it?
No, it's not always on Saturday.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, ma'am.
Nothing.
Rick? Dan?
Nothing, no.
I have a question. This came to me is we took down the permitting site where you can check the permits because of hacking about a year ago.
You referring to the old permit site? E-Track it?
Is that what it, where you can go check the permits?
Oh, we have we have a process, and I have to check on the status of the checking the permits on that. But iWork is a software program that we use for permits.
It's publicly available so people can look up.
As far as I know, it is, yes. I think what you're referring to is E-Track It, which is
E-Track
an
It.
old software version, and I don't believe it's available to the public due to some, is it available? Was shut down for accessibility issues.
Now, is the old permits in the new one so they can be checked to find out?
There are,
And this is where the problem.
oh, and there's internally, there's limited people that have access to it.
limited people have internal access, does the public have access to this?
I don't believe so, no.
How would the public check to see if permits have been pulled on a house or something of that sort other than call into the town?
You have to come in with an appointment.
So why isn't it readily available via the internet? Because the town is shut down. The town, you cannot come into there.
Make an appointment to come in and do.
That's not what we're looking for.
But it's not readily publicly
Again,
available or
listen,
publicly
with all
accessible.
due respect, I don't want to get into IT issues about this because I don't know the details other than it was shut down by
And I get that, and I got
people that make the
people
decision.
asking questions about it as to why they can no longer do it, why we used to be able to do it, and see what's going on, and see if a permit was pulled for this or pulled for that, or
And I suggest,
how are we getting this fixed? I guess it's a question too. Is this a permanent, now permanent in today's day and age? Is this going to be the permanent solution?
I think those questions can be directed to the clerk or the town manager and they can address them knowing when, with knowing that information.
I'm not in disagreement with them, which is
Isn't-
why I
is
brought
that-
it here, that it should
I
be
work
readily
dot gov.
available.
What? iWork.gov?
It's on our website. I don't know the.
It doesn't go on the, it doesn't go anywhere on the town.
Include statuses if you're looking up your status of your permit that you've applied for?
There are no current, I don't believe, unless.
Only each,
Right, so our current system tracks current permits. I'm not aware of any outstanding permits, that maybe there's a couple that haven't been constructed yet or slow construction. Been on iWork since 2018. Unless you have a construction project that's still going on since pre-2018, no permits.
post 2018, you can look up your permit status via the internet.
I believe it was April 2nd of 2018, iWork went online. All new permits after that day went into. The track it system was
Here,
stopped.
not-
Yeah, but only if you come in here and look it up here, so you cannot from home log in, take a look to see what status of your permit post April 2018.
Well, do you mean your history, your permit history?
If there's one, if we apply for electrical swap out permit today,
It's on iWork, it's not on A-Track.
I get that.
Right.
But see, like, for like realtors, and somebody says they got a new air conditioner, new roof, we like to go on there and confirm that they got a permit. But we can't do that.
If it was after April 2nd of 2018, you can.
Okay.
If it was prior to, and it was a permit that was in Track It, E-Track It being
Just
the
the
online
e-track
version.
system is the system you
The
can't
Track
get
It system has been shut down from the internet accessibility because of.
to. iWorks is available to the public via the internet.
Correct.
Okay.
We can also, with requests and emails and public records requests, get the information.
Okay. That's the only thing I have on my LPA members. John, do you have anything?
Oh, no, not yet. I was going to get to that.
Do you two want to tag team this, because you both are together on this? I mean, because next one is you.
So, well, right, so right now, Carl, you checked, right? There is one application, or I think did you get yours in? Yes, okay. So there's one application for the advisory committee, is your own LPA member. We're waiting for a collection of them to put them all together. We'll make sure we put his through so that you have your appointed member, but there were not other members, and the previous members apparently did not submit.
The previous members contacted, they had to.
I don't know. I don't, I honestly don't know if that was sent out to all those members. We will follow up, but my update is there are no applications for, other than your PA appointed.
LPA, and there were, what, 2 people that hadn't expired yet?
3.
3.
You don't have a quorum.
Now, how many open spaces do we have?
He may make a quorum, so I'll double check that.
Four.
But to have 4, right. at
Deadline's
least 3
January the 1st, right?
Sorry?
That deadline was January the 1st.
I think so. I know they use Facebook and some other means. We can extend the deadlines for that, but just trying to get it filled.
Okay.
But if we have a quorum, then they can move forward and start meeting.
We are still looking for anyone who's watching
3.
this, 3 members to join the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee.
Correct.
There are 3 openings on that volunteer board. And you apply through the town.
Correct.
What else?
I wasn't going to get into the details of the HPAC, but I mean, that's just, we need to fill the seats in order to have that complete. It is an assigned by the enabling or ordinance. It's required to have signed. That's one thing that you guys were going to discuss potentially. You have to ask that of the town council to modify that resolution to move that mandatory. That's up to you guys. You have one, but that was the discussion before, was in the future, do you want to have to deal? That'd be a request of the town council.
I think at this time, we table that for now because we do have a member who's on it, and now we just need to fill the next 3 seats. I think if we have, as a board, anybody we know that would be good for that, we encourage them to apply so we can get this thing rolling again. Extremely important board for us. We are at a standstill as the HP, Historic Preservation Board, the HPB, because we don't have an HP.
But you can still function as an historic preservation
There's no
board.
recommendations. There's nothing coming out of the work. The work is not coming up to us.
And the HPV will be involved directly with, as the LPA, with historic preservation discussions related to the comp plan. That doesn't necessarily go to the advisory committee. That's something you could direct or whatever, but we will be dealing with you. You're right.
Our homework is to see if we can't find some people to fill those 3 seats so we can get that board rolling again. And it's to preserve the historic feature of our island, historic pieces of our island. Some of the fun funkiness and stuff of that sort to the island, still here, the bohemian piece, I guess, we're known for.
Are we not having a meeting on the 2nd Tuesday of the month?
I don't have, no.
Okay.
Don't,
Question
we
to
were, these items were moved up as a means to council meeting here and was a directed priority.
Okay.
So I don't have hard stuff for the,
Next
we-
Tuesday.
or the, was it the?
Next meeting is January 12th.
Tuesday, January.
That, yes. We'll also have both these items on Monday for a
Okay.
first reading. You will also have a second reading 11th of January. So, sorry.
Next week's meeting is
Canceled.
not going to take place. All right. Our next meeting then is,
Tuesday, January.
okay.
The 2 items from today, first reading will be on the 7th, next Monday, for the town council. So a representative, want them to be at the first reading, should be,
Is there still a meeting after that? The chairs meeting?
yeah, I believe so, yes.
I will go ahead and attend that meeting then.
This.
Armin's here.
As we're done, I'll double check.
Please do.
And then, again, the path of it is those items in theory, will be scheduled for a second reading, and that next available second reading wouldn't be until January 11th. Council only has one meeting in December. It's too close anyway, but it would have been 11th.
Think for next month's agenda?
Yeah, is there anything you want to hear? I mean, we have some cases that'll be
Okay.
before you, for instance, some reasons that'll be coming.
I think without an HP, Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, we really don't, we need to get that filled first before we start talking about reorganizations and things like that, which I think we just take. I really don't have anything for that next month's agenda.
You're going to request a joint meeting with,
Talked about that in a meeting I attended, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you asked last, height and setbacks
Yes.
will be on the agenda for Monday. For first reading. Potentially a second reading again on January 11th.
Oh, thank you for bringing that back to me.
No problem.
But yes, I did attend a meeting a couple weeks ago, spoke and asked for that, told them that we were working through the HPAC, making another plead for members to apply for it, and then also discussed that we will asking for a joint meeting. I think at this point, the bigger question is with the LDC consultants. Are they making progress, not making I mean,
Yeah, so we're at a more defined schedule for the next steps for you at the next meeting. We have developed survey and some other items to gather public input, and hopefully my idea was, and maybe it's a terrible idea, but my idea was to utilize our town committees to distribute that in the platform to encourage people you're in contact with and residents to participate in the survey, other than just us putting out, I mean, obviously us using Facebook and website and all that's great, but if we can use the committees, come and give a short presentation what the survey is, encourage you to encourage other people to fill it out. That's what we're going to try to do. We haven't rolled out this distribution. The survey, it's input, it's what's vision, what's your.
That's going to be more of what the citizens are interested in seeing, what their concerns about are with our LDC.
Priorities, things,
Priorities.
right, things of that nature that helps kind of shape what's the top issue. Generalized, but it's hopefully specific enough where they get the categories. And then that just helps drive path. And so that'll be a 30 to 45 day
Okay.
respond process. And then there'll be a schedule once that data is collected, or reporting that'll be a report to the council of what that results were, any other feedback, or do they have a reprioritization of that? And then we'll have.
That was my question is, do we schedule this meeting with, and this is for everybody here, a meeting with town council and discuss our priorities for the LDC when we've got this survey going out, which will really tell us what the citizenry is concerned about. So my thought is maybe we pause.
Maybe you do both. I mean, the reality is you have two sides to that, right? You have your received opinions from this group, from the groups, and maybe what you hear. I think the citizen response, if it's successful, may give you a different picture or the same picture. Or you can wait to see and then have that direct to.
And we have all this going on, then I would say that great idea that we start looking at the LDC. We do have ideas after sitting on, for many of us being part of this town and also sitting on this board for of us, and I've seen some of this, that we have some ideas of what our priorities and our concerns are with the LDC. That I think we have a discussion before we can go to town council. We have to have an agenda of what we want to talk about. So I think that we need to really have a discussion about what our priorities are for that LDC.
Is that agenda item for the 12th? Yep. January is.
Let's come back with,
Or next phase glitch / and it doesn't have to be glitch. The previous conversations were editing and tweaking things that weren't full chapters.
You know,
But-
the holes.
Now you're moving into bigger holes.
Those that are new, we did this last year with the LDC, comprehensive plan, the LDC. Came across our top 10 priorities. Town council said, these are our priorities. They aligned with their priorities, and we managed to get through all but,
The main one that has not been resolved because it was such a bigger picture item is the pre-disaster post
that
build
kind of,
back.
that dabbles on both sides.
That's a comp plan related item. So that's part of this process that but that still may be a top priority for you.
That really set our agenda for the 12 months, and but text amendments we saw changes here. So let's do the same thing with the LDC. I know that many of us know some of the holes that we'd like to see buttoned up, some of the areas that are ambiguous, some of the areas that we don't think are appropriate anymore. So let's have a discussion next month on the 12th. 3 to 5 ideas, what you can see, or just in a glance of what you think is a priority. I think this will also help our consultants too as well.
So from a staff perspective, we prefer a conversation amongst yourselves, right, of 3 issues from Patrick, from Dan, for whoever. These are things that I've heard or think are an issue. You guys talk amongst yourselves. And if you can have that list, or we pull it down, whatever it is, then we can go back and respond to a following meeting. It's impossible for us to prepare to respond to every question or every issue you have on the spot. We will try, but I want to make sure the expectations are understood that I'm not going to go through the code in detail and off of memory with you.
Yeah.
But we'll take that list, some kind of response for you for February.
And I think, and at that point in time, we usually, last year, we took it to the town council and said this was our top 10 list that we felt was important. And does it line with what you think is important so that we're not all spinning our wheels?
And frankly, it's going to get to a point where duplicate path or parallel paths of amendments that make sense. Certain things that we can say, okay, this is a big picture that works in 3 or 4 different sections that we have to address as a whole. If smaller, then we can run them concurrently. As a consultant that's written comp plans and LDCs, at some point can drive, and can attest this, it can drive you nuts when the town's continually changing the document you're trying to change. Mm-hmm. If it's small stuff, if it's glitch stuff, that's easy. Big picture changes and make it, there'll be we're not there, but there'll be a breaking point at that where it's say, okay, this is for priority for the consultant. Incorporate these 2 items or 3 items.
Jason, does staff have a list of issues or concerns that you guys keep track of?
Just garage sales. I'm joking.
It's off my list.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yes and no. I mean, there's things that are, format is more of an issue for us, duplication. We're height and setback issue, for example, highlighted, you've got a table that says what the height and what the setbacks and the number of stories are, and then it refers you to a section, multiple sections that then have some of that same stuff in the text, or expands upon it, or goes into other avenues of measuring. We have issues with that, but that's a bigger picture reformatting.
Would it make sense for you guys on the 12th to present those priorities or concerns that you have to us also?
We can probably have a brief list of things that we run into all the time, but again, I think most of our issue is the format and the complexity of finding there's the same thing as 3 different places in the code, and sometimes it's different somewhere else, or it's tweaked, the terminology is tweaked, and so was it intended to be addressing that issue? We go round and round about corner lots, double frontage lots, through lots, 6 definitions that really apply to the same 3 situations. I think the measuring of setbacks on corner lots is a big issue now. We basically it leaves 10 feet whole area in a, well, things like that we could change the definition of that don't have a big effect, I don't think, on the code. It just makes more common sense. There's a couple things we can just tell you what we're dealing with on a regular basis.
Good.
Yeah, we're also trying to be careful, so big picture ideas and the new ideas coming out of the consultant, we don't want to run over those. any of those down.
Jason, do you want us to wipe down our area so you guys don't have to do it before we leave?
It's up, yeah, it's up to you. I mean, it only takes us a minute, it's not.
All right, so,
That's all we have.
coming up for public comment? Closing public comment, do I have a motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
We're out of here at 1.